Well, hello everybody. It's nice to be with you. My good friend Josh asked me to give a little update on what I've been doing for the last year. It's hard to even remember. But I'm winding up my time as a professor at UBC, having taught for 9 years and moving on, not really to retirement. To me, retirement is not when you stop doing stuff, but when you kind of get off the stage and let the new generation move in. And I think that's a kind of a natural process, which is re- really is kind of engaging. So I find myself becoming more and more a mentor these days. I have so many young people that I'm in touch with and doing everything I can to open opportunities for them in the same way that I was gifted with such chances by my own professors and mentors when I was a kid. I remain completely obsessed with Coca. Not simply because Coke is not cocaine, and not simply because the plant has been unjustly pilloried, but because at a deeper level, and in a very positive sense, all of humanity has been denied the benefits of this plant. We keep talking about Coca in negative terms. Coke is not cocaine. Coke is not addictive. Coke is not the cause of the war, whatever. But we forget that Coca is so full of benefits for humanity. And those benefits, I don't mean just nutrition, which it has. I'm not just talking about its medical attributes in the treatment, for example, of altitude sickness. I mean just that here is this remarkable mild stimulant, far better for the body and far more effective than any of the natural stimulants that we habitually use, be it tea, coffee, mate, matcha, whatever. And here is something that actually could bring enormous benefits to all of us. I mean, if you think of the nature of work today, whatever the vocation, we end up looking at a screen. We have to concentrate, we have to focus, we have to produce. And what if I told you there was a natural plant that had been used with no evidence of toxicity, let alone addiction, for 8,000 years, revered by every pre-Columbian civilization of South America as a sacred medicine, the divine leaf of immortality. And that if you look in the records of the 19th century before it became stigmatized, you find account after account after account of bewildered Western physicians writing, I can't quite understand this. You chew these leaves or you take mambe powder and you don't really notice anything, except that after 10 hours you feel fit as a fiddle, you've focused and been produced. It's like the non-stimulant stimulant. How rare. There's a great account of a head of the British Medical Association, a man called Robert Christensen, who said, I decided to check out this plant, and with a few of the lads, we walked across the country, and we climbed several mountains, and got back home, and everything was fine. I'm not at all hungry. We had a good meal, and then I went to bed. Well, he was 78 years old, and he just had a day of his life because he'd been mambiando coca. You know, you the benefit of a natural substance that doesn't give you the physical discomfort of, say, too much coffee or the restlessness that most caffeine plants will give you, the irritation, but rather something so suave, so calm, you don't even notice that you've taken as much as a cup of tea, and you simply find yourself capable of focusing, content, a slight lightness to your being that enhances creativity, if only helping get through that kind of inertia of the creative process. The first word to write down on a line, or the first stroke of a brush of a painting, or whatever the creative endeavor. And so it's not just that this plant deserves to be liberated. It's not just that the 150,000 campesino families in Colombia who depend on this plant for their well-being and have to sell their harvest to the cartels have no access to a legal market. It's not just because um, eradication efforts are hopeless given where the plant grows and given that all it manages to do is drive the entire illicit market deeper into the forest, resulting in more and more deforestation. Here's a plant that could be planted in places that are already worked over. It could rehabilitate those soils, bring vibrant legal economy to the people, give the nation of Colombia, as one example, through tax revenue, the funding to be able to allow it to pay the cost of peace, which is considerable, having exhausted its treasury for 50 years, paying for the expenses of a war that would not have lasted 10 months without the sordid profits of prohibition. And it's time for us to simply expose some of these strange ironies. As many people know, Coca-Cola began with Coca. It's what makes it the real thing. Many people don't realize that Coca-Cola is still the real thing because the Stephan Company in New Jersey imports 144 tons of coca leaves from Peru every year to extract cocaine to service the legal pharmaceutical market for cocaine as an anesthetic, and to use the essential oils, the flavonoids, and the other ingredients in the long revered formula of Coca-Cola. Few people know that Coca-Cola makes $3 billion in revenue every year selling legal cocaine to the pharmaceutical market. And yet researchers, such as myself, have difficulty securing 50 grams of coca leaves to do basic medical studies. And I wrote a kind of a tongue-in-cheek piece for Rolling Stone just before the World Cup. It came to my attention through an article in the New York Times that the Argentinian side, led by Messi, imported to Doha in Qatar 1,100 pounds of their national drink, mate. Now, mate is Ilex paraguayensis. It's in the holly family. It's full of caffeine, full of theobromine, which is the alkaloid that gives a lift to chocolate. There are two other species in that genus that are used as natural stimulants. Ilex guayusa, once grown in plantations by the Jesuits in lowland Ecuador, and Ilex vomitoria, Yopon of the American Southeast, a bitter but strong stimulant that by some accounts was used as a ritual purgative. But the irony is that, and I should say Uruguay, perhaps not expecting to have to stay so long in Doha, where drug use is punished by death, only brought 900 pounds of mate. No one hesitated. The entire Argentinian side, from team members to wives to managers to support staff, were hopped up on mate the entire time. It's their national drink. Now, some years ago, I think it was 2016, I was in Cusco watching the great monitors as Peru's national team defeated New Zealand in Lima and earned a place in the World Cup for the first time in 36 years. But several months before, their top player and their captain had been drug tested in Brazil, where he plays professionally in Sao Paulo, and a small quantity of a cocaine metabolite turned up in his blood. Well, this created an international scandal. Peru qualifies for the World Cup even as this captain is kicked off the team, supposedly for using illegal drugs, cocaine. So his lawyer calls me from Sao Paulo, and my first question was, well, did he go home for Christmas? Oh yeah, he went home for Christmas. Well, did the family travel to the highlands? Oh yeah, they went up to Cusco. Oh, did they stay in the Hotel Monasterio? Oh yeah, that's where they always stay. Well, that meant that he and his family had drunk, at the recommendation of the hotel manager, no doubt, and of every physician in Cusco, copious amounts of mate de coca, a mild coca tea, which is particularly effective for soroche, altitude sickness. And once we could trace that history of use, we are able to get him off. But here's the supreme irony. Argentina, Argentina is allowed to import 1,100 pounds of their natural stimulant, yet if Team Peru turned up in Doha with even a pound of Coca, they would be eliminated and from the tournament altogether. And what might have happened if Peru had been able to take their national mate and drink and stimulant to Doha? Well, we'll never know, except in 1877 in Toronto, Canada, at the International Lacrosse Tournament, two unmatched teams came together. One from a company of office workers, fat, out of shape, indolent. The other team was included members from logging camps and railroads, tough Canadian people who worked every day with their bodies. And yet, the fat team, or the office workers, if you will, not only won the match, at the end of the match, as a doctor who was observing the championship remarked, they were as perky as when they began the match. And the more physically robust team were simply languid on the grass, completely beaten down by the humidity and the heat of the day in Toronto. And of course, the answer was that the office people may not have been as in good shape, but they alone had access to Coca. So who knows what Peru would achieve in the World Cup? Again, if we didn't have these ridiculously hypocritical legal distinctions drawn by the two plants. And of course, of all those natural plants, Coca is the one that can bring most benefits to most people in most places of the world. It literally has the capacity to compete with coffee as an international natural product. And so I feel very strongly that it's not as much time to legalize the use of Coca, but rather to liberate these sacred leaves from the stigma that we've wrapped around them, really simply because of our own biases and in good measure our own ignorance.